And we're back.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Tuesday, September 8th, 2020, and you know what that means. It's time to get nerdy, y'all. Welcome to episode number 156 of Two Nerds in a Pod, the nerdiest video game podcast in the galaxy. I am Lam, also known as Mr. Nice Guy, and I'm joined by my comrade in gaming commentary, future G4 host, the Miggity Mac, also known as Maction. Mac, how are you, brother?
I'm doing well, but clearly you're on cloud nine. Do you know something I don't know?
No, I'm just optimistic because I know how talented you are. We are not officially G4 host. We have heard nothing, but we're hopeful, right? You got to throw your hat in the ring sometimes.
It's true. Yeah, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne
Mac
Gretzky,
with the sports analogy.
Michael Scott.
I love it. But how are you, man? What's new this week? What's been going on?
Oh man, this last week was a holiday weekend, and it kept me super busy. Lots of people decided to come around for the weekend. It's one of those things where it's just like it's kind of all a blur. I mean, what even to say about it? Sadly, couldn't play some tabletop with some of my favorite people because I was busy working.
And it's okay. We forgive you.
Oh, thanks. So yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like it was kind of all over the place and nothing really stands out. The whole week was just sort of a blur in ways that normally it's not. Normally there's like one or two really cool things. I could point out some like disappointing things, but we like to keep it positive here. So
we like to keep it positive.
So, Mr. Nice Guy, save us. Tell us something about your week.
Dude, well, this is an interesting story. Like, it's related to gaming, and I wouldn't say it's positive, but it proves a point that you and I have been trying to prove for a while. I decided, Mac, to try and go visit and support my local GameStop, which is not something that I do often. I'm an Amazon guy. I'll hit up Best Buy every once in a while, but mostly I buy my games on Amazon. So I go into my local GameStop. I wanted to get the new NBA 2K21, and I wanted the limited edition, Mac. And the reason why is because it comes with a copy of the game for next gen for free, or included, I should say, right? So I go in, I ask if they have NBA 2K21, and the guy said, "What console?" I said, "PS4." He said, "Okay, we have the standard." And I said, "Well, do you have any of the limited Mamba edition?" And he was like, "Oh no, did you pre-order?" And I said, "No." He's like, "No, if you didn't pre-order, we don't have any. We have exactly enough for the people who pre-ordered." And I was like, okay. And he was like, "You know what you could do?" And I was like, "Just buy it directly on the console." And he was like, No. You should call us back in a couple days and see if people didn't pick up theirs. And then we can sell it to you in a couple days. And I was like, okay. Well, Mac, you know what I did instead? I walked across the street to my local Walmart. They had it in stock, and it was $10 cheaper than it was at my local GameStop. And I don't want to crap on GameStop too much, but come on, guys. I don't expect you to sell me a copy that belongs to someone else, that someone else pre-ordered. But I do think that as a store that sells video games, you should have a couple extra copies. I get it. It's a limited edition. But Walmart, which is not dedicated to gaming, had it. Oh, and by the way, I had a dope conversation with those Walmart employees about video games while I was there. So Walmart, shout out to you for good customer service. GameStop, I'm trying to help keep you in business. You just lost a $100 sale. Do better, my friends. Do better. Am I being too harsh, Mac?
I don't know. I mean, how many copies of said limited edition did Walmart have on hand when you were there?
I saw 3.
3
in the case, yeah, which is not a ton, but it's some, and they're not a video game retailer. So just to use like a quick analogy, and we can edit this out and post for the actual Apple thing, for the actual pod. When I was working right out of college, I worked for a car rental place, and my manager on my first day, he was like, he knew I was a comedian. He was like, "Dude, if you ran a comedy club and there were people who wanted to watch a show, but you were short a couple seats, what would you do?" And I said, "Well, if there wasn't breaking fire code, I would have some extra seats. I just go get 2 extra chairs and sell those extra tickets." And he was like, "Exactly. And that's why you always keep extra cars. You always have a backup plan so that you can make money when the opportunity arises." And that's what I'm saying about GameStop, man. You got to have some extra inventory. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, that's it. I'm not trying to crap on GameStop. I'm just saying I tried to show love. They weren't accepting.
Mr. Nice Guy dispensing wise and timely business advice.
That's it. Well, Mac, on that note, I say we do something a little bit more lighthearted and do what we do best and hop right into the gaming news, my friend. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. This week has been full of important gaming news. And, I mean, come on, let's talk about it. What do you want to do first?
You know what? I say we start with, let's talk about Super Mario. What do you think about that, man? I know you're a Nintendo lover. So you're making a skeptical face, dude. Let's be honest. You may not like their business practices, but you like retro Nintendo stuff, right?
There are things that I quite enjoy. Especially things like, oh, I don't know, Super Mario 64.
Yeah, should we talk about that? Dude, let's just jump right in.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Super Mario 64, a fantastic game that was really crippled by one unfortunate thing, and that was the camera. I feel like half the time I was yelling at Lakitu, because Lakitu was the one who was floating around in the camera. I felt like I was fighting against Lakitu and the camera angles the whole time.
Yeah, it's true. It was rough. Well, Mac, I have some good news for you since you're a fan of Mario 64, and I think you know what's coming.
I do. I set it up.
Yeah, you really did. He threw me the lob. Mario's 35th anniversary is coming, and Nintendo did a special Mario 35th anniversary Nintendo Direct, and they announced like 6 different awesome things. The first of which, headlining the announcements, was that they will be re-releasing 3 3D platforming classics: Super Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and Super Mario Galaxy. And it's going to be in a package called the Super Mario 3D All-Stars Collection that comes out on September 18th. Regular price is $59.99. So, Mac, these are 3 games that are pretty much beloved, or 2 of them are anyway. Do you have any excitement for this, even though you don't own a Switch? Like, what are your thoughts about this, dude? We've been waiting for this for a while. Mario 64 remastered.
Well, if now hang on just a second. How remastered is remastered on a scale from Super Mario All-Stars the first, where we got the classics done in a different engine with some upgraded graphics and the like, to Final Fantasy VII Remake, where it's practically a whole completely different game. Where do these remasters fit on that scale?
Yeah, that's a great question. Now, my understanding is that it's graphical.
Okay.
And I mean, obviously, we're not going to be using a Nintendo 64 controller, so the controllers will work with the or with the Switch stuff. So maybe there will be some control changes. I don't know if there will be camera changes, since that was your major gripe and most of our major gripe. But graphically, it's going to look pristine. And to me, that's enough to warrant paying for it again and playing it again. We have not ever gotten this game remastered. So I'm hyped for that. And then I never did play Mario Sunshine. So that's one that I missed. And it's a sin. My one sin as a gamer, my greatest gamer sin. So I'm hyped that that's going to be on there. Mario Galaxy, just a great classic that I still have a copy of. So, Mac, that was the first announcement. Now, there's a couple other things that came out. One that I think may interest you. They are going to be releasing a Game & Watch. Are you familiar with the Game & Watch?
Yes, I'm familiar with the Game & Watch.
Yeah, so they're going to be releasing one that's exclusively for this event, this 35th Mario anniversary. And I think it's $60, which I think is kind of priced high. Someone correct me in the chat if I'm wrong about the price. But effectively, it's a Game & Watch that you could play the original Mario game on. So it's really for hardcore enthusiasts. I don't know if I would buy it, but I know that you're into retro stuff like that. Is this something that would be on your radar just because it is a Game & Watch, or is this something you think is a cash grab?
I'm sure that there are those people out there who will love it. I don't see the value in having a Game & Watch style thing that runs just one game.
I agree.
So, I mean, even something like the NES Classic, which I still feel like, which was definitely still a cash grab in and of itself, something that's modeled after a Game & Watch that just plays the original Super Mario Brothers, definitely fits into that category for me.
Yeah, so those were a couple of the announcements. There will also be a Mario 35 Battle Royale, where you're basically playing through Mario 1 levels. against other people. So like as you kill enemies, you send them to the other player's screens. You're trying to get the best time, and only one person remains at the end, just like your typical battle royale. Now, Pazzy brings up in the chat, welcome Pazzy, something that I was going to mention that's pretty significant about many of these announcements. He says, I was excited to pick up Mario 3D Collection, but as soon as they announced it was going to be taken off physical and digital sale March 2021, I decided not to bother. Now, Mac, I don't know if you were aware of that, but this game is a limited release. The physical release is on pre-order right now. I did pre-order it. It will be digital as well, but the digital game leaves the eShop March 2021, never to be purchased again.
Okay, Nintendo. I know that everybody here thought that the Disney Vault was the greatest idea of all time. But and I'm being very sarcastic because it's not. It's a terrible idea. But yeah, why? Just why? Nintendo, this is one step forward, two steps back. I would love a release with better camera controls of Super Mario 64. But goodness gracious, Nintendo, and this goes out to all video game makers. Look, guys, I want to play your games. I want to enjoy them, but I don't want to have a limited time frame or a window where it's only purchasable for this amount of time. That just really frustrates me even more.
Especially digital. Come on.
Obviously digital takes up space, but the amount of space that it takes up is negligible compared to physical. So sure, limited physical release, I would prefer to be able to purchase it even well after its normal date. I'd love to buy a copy, stick it on the shelf when I've got space, but why? Why do you do this to me?
And we already know the difficulties of digital media, right? We know the challenges that come. And so if your Switch gets corrupted, are you still able to access it to download it if you've already paid? Or is it cut off for everyone, or is it cut off only for those that did not purchase it? These are important questions. Moving on real quick, there's a lot of Mario news, Mac, which is why we're going through all of this. We are also getting Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury on the Switch next year. And one of the coolest announcements is the new Mario Kart home circuit. Now, I'm curious what everyone in the chat thinks of this. I know we have some Nintendo fanboys. This is basically Mario Kart with real race cars, like remote control cars. So you buy the game, it's a $99 game, comes with a Mario Kart software, but also comes with real karts that have a camera on them, and you set up tracks in your home. You run the kart using your Switch controller and watch it on your television, but the kart is going around your house on the track that you have built. There's little checkpoints that you can put, and you direct your kart through the checkpoints, and whoever finishes first wins. When you shoot a turtle shell at somebody in the game and you're watching the screen, if it hits their kart on the screen, it will slow down their remote control car as if it was actually hit by a lightning bolt or a turtle shell or whatever thing, right? So it's a really cool, unique idea. I think that it's maybe a little overpriced because you only get one cart with that $99 purchase, and Mario Kart really is a multiplayer game, right?
Well, yeah, but I suppose if you're the type of person who's going to have multiple Switches, maybe not such a bad thing.
Well, and I do believe that you can actually have multiple carts on the same Switch.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so if you have enough controllers, you can just have more than one cart on the same thing and race with your friends or family here in your home, right? So I think it's a cool idea. We'll have to see how it turns out. Mac, any other stuff on Mario that you want to say? Any other Nintendo hate you want to throw their way? I'm just kidding.
Such lovely charged questions. I love them loaded.
I'm just kidding.
But no, I'm not upset. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah, me too. Well, we're not just a Nintendo podcast, but there is a good amount of Nintendo news this week. So I do want to talk about Breath of the Wild 2. Mac, bottom line, this game was basically announced. Its existence.
How is a game basically announced?
Well, because we weren't shown any footage of it. We weren't given a release date or a price or any timetable.
Were we given told that it's in development. Poster, a trailer?
Nah. We weren't given anything like that, but we were given word that it's in the works.
Okay.
And it was confirmed this week once again. This article's on IGN by Adam Bankhurst. It says Eiji Onuma, producer of the Legend of Zelda series, has said that those looking for new updates on The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 will have to wait a bit longer. Speaking during the announcement video for Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, a new game, blah, 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 blah. Onuma said the team is working hard to get the long-awaited sequel, and he asked fans to have a bit of patience until new updates arrived. Quote, we mentioned in the June 2019 Nintendo Direct presentation that we had started development on the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Onuma said. Many people around the world are still playing Breath of the Wild, so I'd like to thank you all from the bottom of my heart. Everyone, thank you so much. Regarding the sequel, in order to make the vast world you enjoyed exploring in the original game even more impressive, the team is working hard on its development, so you'll have to wait a little bit longer. Mac, why even tell us that it exists? Are you old school like me, or do you like to know that this stuff is coming? That's my question for you. Chat, let us know what you think.
I do enjoy knowing what's coming because, well, I do like to get excited. I do like to see something and be like, oh man, there's going to be a sequel to that game I loved, as opposed to not knowing. I mean, I guess that's not exactly a binary decision. Anyway, point being is that I appreciate a little bit of knowledge that something is in the works, that things are going, that things are happening. I think it's an interesting balance to strike, and not a lot of companies do it well. But, I've got nothing in principle against the idea of letting me know what you're working on, and even if you have to be like, oh, we've decided to push the release back a bit, I still like hearing, that things are being worked on.
See, well, that's the thing that drives me crazy. And I guess I'm a hypocrite because I really want some news from Ubisoft about Splinter Cell. Like, I want to know that they are working on it. I want to know approximately when we can expect it. But I feel like announcing stuff 3-4 years in advance is just too much. Like, it happened with The Last of Us. It happened with Ghost of Tsushima. And then these games get delayed and they get delayed and they get delayed. And by the time that they finally get here, maybe The Last of Us isn't a good example, but with a lot of other games, by the time that it finally gets here, it's like you've heard so much about it that you're just not as excited as you would have been. I miss the days where you hear about a game for the first time at E3, right? Or when the company chooses to announce it, as opposed to saying, hey, this is in development. And even showing us like a 1-minute cinematic trailer, I feel like it's pointless if you're years away. That's just my opinion, though. And we can agree to disagree. It's totally cool. Chat, let us know what you think. I will say this, Mac. Breath of the Wild, to me, is the best Zelda game ever made. I don't know if it is for you, but I'm hyped for the second one.
I really enjoyed Breath of the Wild, and I think I can agree. I think it's fantastic. What I really wish, though, is that, as we know, during the course of development of the original Breath of the Wild, they said that they had made Breath of the Wild, but in it was either 8-bit or 16-bit style, to make sure that like the ideas for the puzzles would work in different viewpoints, or it was something like that. It was like a development tool. So they basically built the game in either 8 or 16-bit to explore the puzzles, to try out things. I desperately want that. I think that Breath of the Wild as a 16-bit game would be the perfect game of all time. But I can't have everything. So I'll just say with Breath of the Wild for the time being is probably the best Zelda game.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's that or A Link to the Past, right? That's where we're at. So moving on to our next news story. Mac, there's a game. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Pazzy did. We did have a couple folk who chimed in response to your question.
Sure.
Ishmobile doesn't actually follow gaming announcements for that reason, the reason that you're talking about. Not really interested to know something's coming out a long time away. Whereas Pazzy quite enjoys waiting until they know for sure it's going to be released in a few months. Mostly find announcing games or videos without gameplay to be empty, and I'd rather not know. Also, not knowing makes it easier to change the product and delay it without worrying about angering people. So it looks like I'm very much outnumbered here. Everybody is very much on board with the don't tell us till it's ready.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago at E3 they announced Fallout 4, and it was like they announced it at E3 in June, and then it came out in November. And I love that. I love that method of saying, hey, here's what we have. It's coming out this day. Nintendo has been doing this lately, Mac. They've been saying, hey, here's a new game. Oh, by the way, it's coming out right now on the eShop. And I think that's a great way of doing it. But anyway, let's move on. I got one more we'll share real quick. This is just about a game that I'm super hyped for. And I know that Uncle Ruckus, my good friend and friend of the podcast, is hyped for this. This is about Cyberpunk 2077. And speaking of when you should announce games. Wow, someone literally just typed about Cyberpunk in the chat.
Indeed. Master of Lie, you are on point.
Right after I said that. That's dope. Well, anyway, actually, Master of Lie, it has been getting pushed back, but here's the good news. It is entering the final stretch of development, and that's what this article is about. This is on Game Informer by Jason Gusau. It says, during the latest episode of a YouTube series focused on CD Projekt Red's financial quarters, CFO, and I'm going to butcher this name, Piotr Nielubowicz, affirmed that Cyberpunk 2077 has entered the final stretch of development despite switching the company to a home office model. He said that the recent success and popularity of the hands-on demo as well as the Night City Wire series means that CD Projekt Red has adjusted well in the face of the global pandemic. Mac, I just think this is a feel-good story, man, because it shows that with this work-from-home model, that game companies can still get games out. And I almost wonder if we will ever go back to the way things were as far as game development, or if people will just do stuff separately and then collaborate at the end and bring it all together. All we can do is hypothesize. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true. I'm not going to lie. There's definitely some advantage of having people in the same spot for being able to work on things. But I mean, as we've learned from a lot of the various crowdfunding games, the Kickstarters that we've had over the past, a lot of those teams have been remote. They've pulled, pixel artist from Germany and musician from Brazil and coders from the UK and, all that sort of thing. And they've seemed to make it work pretty well for some of these titles that we know and love. But it will be interesting to see how the long-term impacts of this in video games.
Yeah, and for all those, I'll end on this, Mac. For all those interested in buying Cyberpunk 2077, it's currently available for pre-order on Amazon for $49.99, which is $10 off of the actual price if you're getting it on PS4, Xbox One, or PC. And if you're getting it on console, it does come with a free upgrade to next gen. I feel like that's a phenomenal deal for a game that's coming from the company that made Witcher 3 that will probably have a lot of post-release support and tons of content. That's been our news for the week.
All right, well, let's move on to a little bit of history. Let's look into the past, because this week, in years before, some cool things have happened, and I want to start back in 1983 with a little company called Coleco. Now, Coleco's probably not exactly a big player, or at least it wasn't a big player in the home console market with their ColecoVision, although, I'm sure a lot of people are still familiar with it. It's one of those that rings somewhere in the back of your head, and you're like, oh yeah, I've heard that. But it would have been back in 1983 that Coleco teamed up with AT&T to make modems so that they could communicate over phone lines with the Coleco computers and consoles. They called it Atom Link. Now, why this is notable is Atom Link, named for their line of Atom computers. Now, I don't think this is the first consumer modem, because when I was reading through back in not Evelink, well played, Ishmobile. Back when, as I was reading over it, they had the word modem, and often when something winds up being the first of some, of a consumer product or whatever, they usually don't have you won't hear them reporting about it. They'll have a modem for communication or whatever. It'll be something like, they are calling this new technology modems, and that's usually a tip off if you're not 100% sure. So I'm pretty sure that there were consumer available modems for communicating over the over phone line before 1983, although I couldn't exactly pin down where, when exactly that started. But I think that this is the first one that did it for not just computers, but also for consoles. We would later on see things, obviously, the ubiquity of online connection for a video game console wasn't until much later down the line with, I want to say, I feel like Xbox 360 is right where, we had online connections being a central part of the console's appeal. But
I agree.
But
that gen.
yeah, we certainly had, for example, the Sega MegaNet back in 1990, which obviously the Atom Link helped paved the way. And while we can't discount that this is something that would definitely have happened eventually, it's not like modems for game consoles wouldn't have happened if not for the Atom Link, because people were already trying out networking for games as far back as when we turned Colossal Cave Adventure into a MUD. And on that note, let's talk about the multi-user dungeon released in 1978, MUD 1. For those of you who are familiar with that, the progression would have gone Colossal Cave Adventure, which begat Zork, which begat the multi-user dungeon, or MUD 1, if you will. So, for those of you who've never played Colossal Cave Adventure or Zork or a MUD, essentially it is a text-based, it's a text-based thing, and I encourage you to watch, which would it have been? Was it episode 3 of High Score, Netflix's recently released documentary where they spend a little bit of time talking about MUDs in the past?
I believe so.
And but it's essentially entirely text-based. And Colossal Cave Adventure, you would pick up sword, use sword to open envelope, things like that. But the multi-user dungeons, or the MUDs, in 1978, which operated primarily off of mainframes that had mostly in mainframes of institutions of higher learning, because those were kind of the only places that had them back in those days. They were quite notable, of course, for being fun, but also terribly laggy, because if you think internet infrastructure in the United States today is bad, just wait until you start thinking about how it was in 1978. And to keep a theme rolling, it was also this week in 2000 that Sega launched SegaNet for the Dreamcast. So
yes,
I feel like this whole week has just been, these sorts of, internet adjacent or, online gaming situations. We couldn't go without mentioning, of course, the release of Final Fantasy 7 and 8, both this week in 1997 and 1999, respectively, and in 2008, the release of Spore on the PC, an EA Games title. And I think I've, droned on much too long about video game history, but hopefully thing or two you haven't heard before. So that's been video game history.
That was dope. Like, that was very cool because it taught us a lot about not the hardware, but the infrastructures that led us to where we are today. Because there were so many attempts at internet stuff back in the day, but none of them could compare to where we are. But it's still cool to hear about them.
Yeah.
And I'm also excited because I know that you watched a show that I've been wanting you to watch, and I'm hyped to talk about it, but I will not get ahead of myself.
Indeed.
Moving on. It's time for the topic of the week, a segment where we talk about something relevant in gaming, the most hot story in gaming, and give our opinions on it. Who wants to guess what we're going to talk about this week? I'll give you a huge hint. We're going to talk about that Xbox. Last night, if anyone was breezing Twitter, just perusing Twitter last night at about 11 p.m. Central Standard Time, there were tweets going out where people had posted pictures of the Xbox Series S with a rumored price and a rumored release date. And Xbox went ahead and confirmed that. So here's the bottom line. We're not going to read an article. We're just going to talk about this. The Xbox Series S is set to launch on November 10th. and it is going to cost $299. We don't know much more about it other than supposedly it's not going to have a disk drive and it's not going to have 4K capability. It's going to be all digital action, but it's going to be $299, which, to put things in perspective, when I bought my PS4 in 2014, it was $399 at launch. I believe it has a 500 gigabyte hard drive and obviously plays 4K, and has a disk drive that you can play Blu-rays and stuff on. So, what are your thoughts, just generally speaking? $299 for an all-digital console, no disk drive, coming November 10th.
And
Tempting to you
and
at
it's
all?
and it's not 4K capable?
Yeah, I read on TheVerge.com, and I believe this to be true, that it is not going to be 4K capable.
Well, I'm only just barely getting to that 1080p life lately. So, I mean, 4K isn't much of a thing for me, but I can definitely see it being a problem for everybody else. The non-starter for me is a digital-only console. And those of you who've been around, at the very least, you could go back and listen to the episodes in the 80s where that is to say, not in the 1980s, but in the 80s episodes of Two Nerds in a Pod, where I spent more or less 4 or 5 straight episodes using the legalese to talk about, legal issues surrounding digital-only video games and the like. And I am again it. I also recently, just to get on my soapbox, had that sadly brought back to me in an unfortunate way and granted, it's only a mobile game, but I became aware of a mobile game called Trexels 2, which is a pixel art heavy, so you know why it appeals to me, based version of a sort of, it is kind of a mixture between, shall we say, XCOM and Fallout Shelter. Two
got it.
Games that probably everybody's heard about. But so it's got those things where, it's like the ship management, and then you go on missions, and on the away missions, it's more XCOM themed. But anyway, lovely, fantastic pixel art. It was available for, on mobile devices, iOS and Android. And then I only discovered the game like 3-4 days after they removed it and pulled it from all stores. So you can't get it anymore. If you didn't already have it, you can't get it now. And it's one of those where that's very disappointing to me. So when you say digital only on a console, I'm like, no, this pushes us farther and farther away from the video games that I love and want to experience for ages. That's why I have consoles that have cartridges.
Yeah. Not to mention, and you don't just have cartridges, like ones that do disc and stuff too, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, point taken. Now, a couple people in the chat have offered us some additional info. So
wonderful.
Galvatron and Pazzy, well, let's read both of them. Galvatron says the Series S will also have less RAM, less capable CPU and GPU, and a 512 gigabyte solid state drive.
So 512 gigs, 512 gigs, that'll hold 3 games and 2 day 0 patches?
Yeah, so you'll have to buy an external hard drive and use that USB port to really make it worth it. Because just to put things in perspective, I have Halo 5 on my Xbox Series S, my Xbox One S, and that's like over 100 gigabytes. And then there's updates and stuff like that. That's literally 3 games. You're exactly right. He says there's no disk drive and the top resolution is 1440p. 120 hertz. Pazzy says the same thing. I believe the Series S is supposed to run games at up to 1440p, but output 4K for Blu-ray and streaming. So I think he means like if you're watching, because it has no Blu-ray player, but if you're watching like a Netflix or something, it can output it at 4K resolution. It seems to be what he thinks. Here's my thoughts on this. First of all, I'm frustrated that it got leaked. Some people think the leak is intentional because
are you saying suspect. The call is coming from inside the house?
Inside the building. It's like one of those horror movies. We just traced the call, ma'am, and it's coming from inside your house. The killer's inside your house. The leak went out last night, and then like 10 minutes later, Xbox was like, well, let's just go ahead and confirm this. And they tweeted out that the leak was indeed real. But one of the Xbox staff today, the marketing guy, said, if you think that this is amazing news, wait to see what we have in store. So the reason it frustrates me that it was announced is because it's Microsoft and Sony just need to tell us, give us information. These releases are 2 months away, and we don't know how much they're going to cost at a time when people are out of jobs, people are trying to budget, people are trying to figure things out due to coronavirus. Just give us information. Don't make us wait. So that's what frustrates me, that it came from a third party. Now, Mac, as far as the console itself, I'm not impressed with it at all.
Mm.
I get what they're trying to accomplish. For people who don't have a current gen Xbox or a PC, they're trying to offer an alternative that will allow them to play those Xbox games that are coming out within the next couple of years. Xbox has already told us, or rather Microsoft has told us, that Halo Infinite will be playable on current gen hardware as well as PC. And so I see no reason for me to go buy this new box, but someone who doesn't have it, $300 is a great deal. Hop in, enjoy your Halo if you skipped this gen for some reason. That's where I stand on it. Let us know in the chat what you guys think. Do we have more comments, Mac, from people in the chat?
Yeah, a couple. Mostly comments about external hard drives and the like related to it. And Spennis, of course, is curious to see what games as a service, what the games as a service model will bring as time goes on. I, of course, have already spoken my piece, and I don't think it will bring anything good, but, that's just me.
Yeah, so now we just twiddle our thumbs and wait to see what the Xbox Series X ends up being like, because we know about the S, we do not know about the X. And that's really where we're at with this. We'll continue to give you updates as we get them here on the pod. And Mac, that's been our topic of the week, man.
All right. Well, now let's take a look at a scrappy upstart, a crowdfunding project that's trying to get off of the ground in this segment that we call Kick or Kickstart. I'm posting a link in the chat, so you can all click on it if you are so capable and join me to discuss Haiku the Robot. This is a Kickstarter project that is being helmed by just one guy, also with the help of someone who's a bit better on music. His words, not mine. They are looking for $28,000, and currently they're at $8,000 to bring this Kickstarter to life. There's currently 30 days left to go, and it's a $16 buy-in, and the game is supposed to be released on, on PC. So you've got Steam, Mac, the like, as well as Switch is supposed to be released on Switch. So
will it be on the Epic Game Store? That's my spot.
I'm just
kidding.
I don't know.
I'm just messing with you.
I know you are. So Haiku is a cute little robot with a big sword, and it's sort of a post-apocalyptic setting, wherein Haiku has been brought to consciousness, if you will, after not only apparently great harm has befallen all the humans, but also most of the robots and the like have had some sort of viral infection that is making them all mean and terrible and rampaging. And so you go around to try and find and root out the source of this terrible computer virus that is making all the robots go crazy. In play style, it is going to be a Metroidvania of sorts. That means a game where you explore and you upgrade your abilities, which lead to the opening of new areas. Pixel art. I mean, what's not to love? It is also going for that sort of Game Boy-ish, not quite sticking exactly to what would it have been? It would have been like the 4 colors and 8 hues. So it's not exactly limiting itself to true Game Boy monochromatic, but it is certainly taking a monochromatic adjacent spin on stuff. They're using more than 2 colors, but it certainly has that kind of sensibility in most of its level creation. So yeah. And if I didn't mention it already, $16 buy-in if you want to have a copy upon release. for the platform of your choice. Oh no, that's just it's the 16 if you want the Steam. I believe it's a $20 one if you want to get the a little bit extra if you want to get the reward for other platforms like Switch. So
Okay.
tell
Cool.
me,
So Mac,
what do you think?
So here's my thoughts. Mac and I try not to collab too much before the show, and I saw this Kickstarter, and I was like, I hope he picks this one. And he did. So great minds think alike. This looks great. You guys know, if you listen to the pod, that Hollow Knight is one of my favorite games, not just indie games, but games of all time. And this is heavily inspired by Hollow Knight. It looks like Hollow Knight meets Kirby, kind of. I like the look of it. I like the guy who's making the game as far as his online presence, Mac. I did a little bit of, in fact, I followed this account on Twitter.
Oh.
I
now
do,
hang
and I've
on.
been
You followed, like as in you followed when you saw this game, or like you were already following the dude?
No, I was already following this game on Twitter. Yeah, for like a few weeks.
A few weeks, dude. How did you run into him? Because the Kickstarter's only been going for a bit.
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's a Kickstarter that we did a while ago, and I can't remember the name of it, but I tried to kickstart it. We talked about it on the show. It didn't get funded, but every time they like give a suggestion or they fund another Kickstarter, it pops up in my email, and it'll say like such and such that you tried to fund recommends this project, right? And so I saved this one because it hadn't gone live yet, but I wanted to stay on top of it when it did go live because I really like this idea. And as I was reading about this guy on Twitter, he said that he spent the past year learning how to code simply for the purpose of making this game. So like he taught himself how to program, and now he needs the money to finish this game. So over the next year, he needs it to survive, the money to provide for himself.
Yeah,
and I think
he said he
wants respectable.
Yeah, he said he wants to quit working and focus on the on actually making the game. So yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, so no, he's not begging for money, but he's trying to finish this labor of love, and it looks awesome, Mac. I only have good things to say about this. This is like an expert masterclass in how you put a Kickstarter together. This is everything that I want in a video game, and I'm excited for it.
Nice. So I guess that means a kickstart from you.
Well, we'll have to wait and see till it's time to vote.
Well, I think so. I actually quite like it. I played through the demo. There is a playable demo. Woohoo! And so I played through it. I enjoy it. There is no map in the playable demo, which is actually something that's kind of like right out in the front. They're like, sorry, there's no map. I know a Metroidvania without a map is no Metroidvania at all. Sorry about that, but it will be here eventually. So there's a sort of genuine charm to this that I really enjoy, and I encourage you all, free demo, download it, play it, give it a shot. But it certainly won me over, and I as well. I think it's time to vote. Mr. Nice Guy, I say kickstart.
Dude, I say kickstart. And I don't just want this to be funded. I want the swag. I want these socks that he's giving out with the characters on them. I want one of these t-shirts. Like, I want this game to do well. And I hope that it becomes the next Shovel Knight, where if you were smart enough to fund it in its early development, that you get all the DLC and that it goes on to be one of the greatest indies of all time. Because it looks like it has that type of potential.
Well, and
so kickstart,
and those who are with us are going to be. Looks like overwhelmingly, Kane's in with a kickstart. Rolf is in with a kickstart. Spennis is out actually. Very interesting project. Graphics are simplistic, but not thrilled with the Metroidvania genre. Price point is high for the simplicity of the art. I'm extremely disappointed with the lack of the elements of a haiku in dealing with things in 575 format. This underdelivers for me, and for that reason I am out. So a kick from Spennis, although that does imply that you could win Spennis over if perhaps you started integrating haikus into the NPC dialogue. Just throwing that out there. But for the most part, it looks like we're all on the same page. A kickstart for this one, obviously. Mr. Morris, we wish you well on this. We hope that it gets funded, and you've certainly gained a few fans over here at Two Nerds in a Pod. So thanks for putting yourself out there. Thanks for creating, and we hope that other people see what you're doing and appreciate it as well. And that has been Kick or Kickstart.
Yeah. Can I give a quick shout out to Kane? He's gifted a couple subs. We really appreciate that. This is very kind of you to do that, man.
Yeah. Thanks, Kane.
Appreciate you, brother. Well, cool. Time to move on to a segment we like to call Nerd Flex.
Woohoo!
A segment where you, the viewer, try to stump the host, and we always get at least 1 out of 3 right. Well, now's the time where if you have questions, we'd like to take them live so that no one thinks we're Googling the answers in advance. So hit us up with those questions in the chat. And Mac, just as a reminder, didn't we do a audio question last week in the episode?
So episode 155 had a sound test as part of it, and I believe of the sound tests that we have done since episode 128, or was it 128, I think, when we first did it, there are still 5 sound tests that remain unclaimed. We've tried to do about 1 every month, and if you want to hit us up on Twitter, we can tell you exactly which ones those are. But yeah, there are still unclaimed prizes. There are still Perlers out there to be won.
Oh, that's nice, man.
I know, it's a dragon
nice
from
Perler.
Tactics Ogre. So
I love it.
So yeah, I mean, up your game, folks. So, but thanks for letting me give that little recap.
Gotcha. Well, cool. Let's get things started. Now, if questions come in the chat, Mac, let us know. But for now, let's go to the test bank, and we'll get started. So here's the first question. This is a Rockstar one. What vehicle almost always appears in the top left corner of GTA's box art? This is a tough one.
So I'm aware of the Grand Theft Auto games, but I've never really played them. But I feel like a Camaro.
Yeah, I'm trying to visualize.
Like some muscle car, that seems a Grand Theft Auto thing, because especially since they kind of range their, right, like the titles like range through a certain time frame, but they almost always seem to have muscle cars featured. So
okay. And just because I'm gonna go with something a little more sporty. I'm gonna go with like not a Camaro, with a Ferrari, because I feel like there's the top cars you can get in that game are usually like a sports type. So I'm gonna go with that.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with that. Let's see what the answer is. Oh my gosh, we weren't even close. It was vehicle, but it's a helicopter.
Okay. Helicopter. Yeah, that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Okay. Well played.
You got us.
You got us.
Well played. Well played. Well, we do have a question in the chat. And it's one of those Spendus questions. You want to read that, Mac?
Sure. We actually also have a question from Galvatron, but we'll do Spendus's.
Okay.
In Pokemon Red and Blue, the journey between badges of the Rainbow Badge and the Volcano Badge, there are 3 keys. A card key, a lift key, and a secret key. Which of these do you get first? Okay, this is going back a little bit. But let's see. The lift key is so that you can get through Silphco, if I remember right.
Dang, good memory.
The card key, gosh, I forget where the card key came from. And the secret key. The secret key, I feel like, did we find that in the middle of... I feel like that was something that we found in, like, the middle of the floor or something. But in...
Dude, I don't remember. It's been too long. I don't remember.
Just in my mind, they all occur around... you wind up getting them, in between those 2 badges, but it's all, like, relatively quickly together. So... I'm going to say... I'm going to guess Secret Key.
Which one do we get first? So you're going with Secret Key.
Mm-hmm.
Card Key, Lift Key, and Secret Key. I'm going to go with Lift Key.
Okay.
It just seems right. So Spennis, let us know in the chat what the right answer is. And then we have one from Galvatron too. Did you want to read that as well?
We do. Why don't you read that one?
Okay, sounds good. So Galvatron asks one about gaming history, kind of. He says the code name that Microsoft gave to the first Xbox was Project Midway. Why did they call it that?
Man, it's a good question. My first inclination is to say that it might have something to do with... my knee-jerk is to say that it had something to do with Midway Games.
That's what I thought too, but I can't think of anything notable from Midway that is on the original Xbox. Like, I remember college, friends playing original Xbox, me playing it with friends. It was all about Halo, Splinter Cell, some racing games, that type of stuff. But I can't think of any Midway, like old school Midway games.
Well, but also at the same time, Midway was kind of the, if I'm not mistaken, like, isn't that what is like that portion, that area for games in like a carnival? Isn't it the Midway that you go to when you want to play games in a carnival?
I don't know. That's something I'm not aware of, but that sounds like it could be right.
I mean, I feel like we might have had a terrible draw this time around because I've felt confident about absolutely none of these questions so far.
So here's what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say that the reason they called it Project Midway is because they felt it was a middle of the road console. Like, they felt like it was going to be better than the GameCube, which was the Nintendo console at the time, but not quite up there with the PS2. I'm going to say they thought it was middle of the road.
I don't know. That seems a lot of I don't know. That seems like some terrible messaging from your corporate folk. But
it does, but that's what I'm going with. I think it was something related to the word middle.
I mean, I suppose the only other thing could be there was that Battle of Midway, but I don't see how that would have any bearing on the, on why they would name it that, because it's not like the launch title or anything was connected,
right?
So
not a war game or anything. So well, while we wait for him to type the answer, why don't you read Spennis's answer to his question about Pokemon?
All right, so Spennis says the lift key is in the Celadon game corner, of which is accessed to an elevator to get the Silph Scope. Yep, I remember that, which occurs before the card key for navigating around Silphco. And the secret key to get access to Blaine's chamber. Okay, so Mr. Nice Guy, you said lift key. You got it right.
Hey, I had a 1 in 3 chance.
It goes lift key, card key, and secret key. So congrats on getting that one right. Let's see, Galvatron's answer. They called it that because the Battle of Midway was the turning point against the Japanese in the Pacific Theater in World War II, and they were competing against Sony and Nintendo, two classically Japanese companies.
So in a sense, we both were kind of piecing it together. You mentioned Battle of Midway, and I said they were competing with other companies there in the middle, but I technically was wrong. But not a bad effort.
Yeah, not a bad effort.
That has been Nerd Flex. We'll keep things moving, right, Mac? I know we got
absolutely. We'll keep on moving. We're coming up against time. Next is Legalese.
Legalese.
So we're going to keep it short today, and I know I said last time that we probably weren't going to hear a lot more for at least a few weeks until the end of September on Epic v Apple, but wouldn't you know it, I've been wrong before, and I'm wrong again because we have a new filing from Epic against in their court case, and it's interesting because they have taken a slightly different approach, and instead of focusing on a whole broad spectrum of arguments, they've really kind of focused in on what are probably some of the best ones, kind of the best arguments that they make. It is notable that in response, of course, to the judge, I think I shared last time that, experts will disagree as to whether or not, will argue as to whether or not $30% is an anti-competitive amount of money for Apple to be taking, but no one would argue that 0% is the amount that they should be charged for access, be given for access. And they basically have said absolutely nothing in those most recent filing about 30% cut. I think they've kind of realized that that's a sort of, that the percentage, that's not something that they're going to be able to make solid arguments on. But they have really tightened up their argument on the monopoly side of things. And I'm going to give a quote directly from their new filing. It says, but creating the iOS platform does not entitle Apple to compensation for app distribution and in-app payment processing services. This is absolutely a point that they were trying to make previously, and they kind of danced around, and, they made the point, yes, but nowhere in their previous filings have they made it quite as succinct and direct about that, and they've been like, hey, just because you made the platform doesn't entitle you to compensation for the distribution and the in-app payment processing services. While it's still a point that I disagree with, and I think that Epic is very much doing this thing where they pretend as though they, as a developer, gain nothing from the... And I'm not a fan of the walled garden ecosystems, right? I'm not a fan of only having one way to get your content. It is, it's not a good thing. But you can't pretend like it doesn't have its advantages. If it didn't have real value to the consumer as well as to the, to the developer, then we wouldn't have people being like, oh, am I going to go for an iPhone this time or am I going to go for an Android? They'd be like, they would be like, oh, I'll go for the Android every time if it didn't actually give consumer, value that consumers wanted and the type that developers have. And more people put out their games on iOS, their mobile games and the like. So clearly there is some value there to having that garden. And Epic very much likes to pretend like there's nothing that is, like there's no good in having the distribution and the platform tied together, which is, we'll keep going there. Don't make me defend Apple, Epic, please. I don't like being in this position. Stop it. They do make a point of bringing up Kodak, Eastman Kodak v. Image Tech servers, and that's one that we've actually talked about in the past on Legalese, surprisingly, about the aftermarket for products. And they're making this argument in this new filing that essentially the app market is entirely an aftermarket, and that the power over the market doesn't come from contracts that Apple has signed, or that consumers have signed with Apple's rather, but that Apple's just unfairly leveraging. It's an interesting argument. I think it's probably, it's a pretty good one. I'm still not 100% convinced, but I mean, it's a lot better. This new filing doesn't do a lot of, shall we say, grandstanding, where they just talk about, oh, Apple used to be the upstart who was going to save us from 1984, because that wording did show up in the original documents. They're like, Apple has become the very thing it sought to fight against. So I mean, they've kind of moved away from that. I feel like they feel like they've milked about as much as they can out of, games journalists and people on the whole, making rhetoric, and have started going into making actual substantive arguments now. There is one interesting note that they did put in there. It's a claim that they make. They did not. I didn't see. Well, I mean, I want to see some substantiation on this claim, but they claimed that during the time that people could buy directly from Epic, that brief window where they're like, oh, you can either pay full price from Apple, or you can pay discounted price from Epic, they claimed that only 53.4% of users sorry. They claimed that only 53.4% of users took them up on the buy direct from Apple, which seems strange.
On the buy direct from Epic, you mean?
Yeah, on the buy direct from Epic and therefore pay less money. So they are making the claim that there was still, 47% of users who saw, I can buy it for less money, I'll still buy it from Apple. And I could see some amount of people doing it, but that amount, I'm not 100% sure. And they use that to say, hey, look, 0%, there were still plenty of people buying from Apple.
I feel like there was probably some confusion as well. But that's just me guessing. Like, I can't imagine that people were purposely wanting to spend more money to support one of the biggest companies in the world.
Yeah.
To me, that doesn't make sense. But.
So they decided to spend money to support one of the other largest companies in the world.
Well, the company that made the game.
True, yes, but still one of the big ones.
Sure.
Anyway, so that's been legalese. I said I was going to keep it short, and I kept on going. My apologies. But at the end of the day, it's a little bit more of the same, but a little bit less rhetoric and a little bit more solid argument in this. So that's legalese.
Oh, this has been a fun episode, man. We talked about Mario. We talked about Pokemon a little bit. We talked about Apple. We talked about a lot of really good stuff, the new Xbox, and some other fun things. So, Mac, before we go, we got one last segment called What We've Been Watching and What We've Been Playing, where we talk about just that, the cool, nerdy stuff we have been into. And if you're here live, you have a job to do. Let us know in the chat what you've been watching on Netflix, on Hulu, on TV. Let us know what you've been watching on YouTube, what you've been playing on your consoles, on your PC, on your mobile devices, maybe even on your old Game & Watch. Mac, should I start this week, or do you want to go first?
Sure, go ahead and start.
So I've been watching a little bit more High Score, and I'm excited to talk about it briefly, maybe in the post show with you, get your thoughts. I've been watching a lot of NBA basketball, and I know that you have as well. And as far as what I have been playing, I've been getting a little bit of Rainbow Six Siege in. I did pick up NBA 2K21, as I mentioned earlier in the show, and I've really, really been loving it, man. I didn't buy it last year, but I picked it up this year, and I've been grinding on it. I streamed it a couple days ago and had a really good time. So that's been my main game. And what else? That's pretty much it, man. Not as much gaming and TV as normal. But how about you, brother? What have you been into?
Well, I've been playing a little bit of Haiku the Robot, of course. Played that demo. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I played, I've been playing some GURPS. That's pretty much all that I've been playing. What I've been watching, though, I have certainly been watching some High Score. I made it through the first 3 episodes over the week.
Nice.
Also been watching a little bit more Better Call Saul because I'm excited for the 5th and final season upcoming. So I've been watching back through.
I think we just did season 5, right? Anyway, regardless, I get your point.
Whichever season is the last, I'm looking forward to it. There is too little Better Call Saul for my taste. So whatever the last one is, I'm here for it.
Cool. Nice. Well, we got some people in the chat who are watching stuff. Now, before we read the stuff they've been watching, everyone else, please get your stuff in that you've been watching and playing. Mac, generally, what are your general thoughts on High Score? That's a gaming show. What are your thoughts on it so far, the documentary?
So I like it, but at the same time, I feel like it is a show about game history that is trying to cater a little bit too much to people who've never played games before.
Ah, that's an interesting take.
Yeah, and I feel like I feel like a lot of the time I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I wish you would go more in depth on, oh no, okay, yep, all right. And it's, and it's just like, if you want to be a show, if you want to be a thing about, video game history, I am here for that. But make it about video game history. Give me deeper dives. I feel like it's just a little bit so far, and it's only 3 episodes so far, but I feel like it's just a little bit too, a little bit too surface level for my tastes.
Ah, interesting. Interesting. I like that take. And we'll talk more about it in the post show because I have some opinions on that too. But let's read what the people are into, Mac. Why don't you start us off, brother?
Sure. Let's see. Ishmobile is watching Outlander and the Muppet movie, and he's playing you want me to do watching, or should I just do both?
Either way, just roll with it. Just roll with the punches.
Yeah, and playing Insurgency Sandstorm. Rolf has been playing Crusader Kings 3 and Slay the Spire. Nice. Pazzy's playing EverQuest 1, a classic, Mass Effect Andromeda, and World of Warcraft on a test server. They are really turning that game around. Reading World of Warcraft Before the Storm, some fantastic writing and strong feelings for newly introduced characters. Very cool. You want to take over from Galvatron?
Yeah, let's do it. So Galvatron is watching The Boys Season 2. He says, well, we're not going to get into the commentary, but he's watching The Boys Season 2. Perry Mason on HBO, Lovecraft Country on HBO, and Gladiator. Spennis is watching High Score, Up, Up, Down, Down, which is a YouTube channel, and he's playing. Did you read Spennis already at all? Did you read what he's playing?
Nope.
He's playing Fall Guys, one game away from maxing out to Season 1. Nice. And he's playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, the remake. Madden 21 and MLB The Show 20. Uncle Ruckus is playing Payday and watching The Simpsons. And I forget what all you read, but Pazzy's watching AEW Pro Wrestling. Galvatron is playing Mario Kart 8, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Star Wars Battlefront 2, Tuhu Luna Nights on Game Pass. And I have not heard of it, but it sounds cool. I'm going to actually Google that after the show. 8-bit Metroidvania, he says.
I'm always here for Metroidvanias.
Cool. Well, Mac, why don't you take us home, and then we'll do the post show, brother.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming out and being a part of the show. You are the greatest. You are the best listeners on podcast platform. You're the best viewers on Twitch. And you're just all around the best people. We care about you. We're glad you're here. Be excellent to each other and party on, dudes, at the same bat time each week on the same place, twitch.tv/2nerds in a pod. Be excellent to each other and keep it nerdy. See ya.
Bye. Cool.